He moved into apartment 7 thinking it was just another flat. But the moment the door closed behind him, he realized he was not alone. What if the walls themselves could watch you? What if the shadows that dance in the corners of your room aren't yours? Every home has its creaks and groans, its settled history, but some places hold on to more. They remember, they wait. Would you dare spend a night here? Would you be brave enough to turn the key, step inside, and face what lingers in the silence? For some, curiosity is a pull too strong to resist. For the resident of apartment 7, it would become a nightmare he could never forget. His name was Alex, a young software developer chasing a dream in the bustling heart of the city. The job was perfect, the future bright, but finding an affordable place to live felt impossible. Then, he found it, apartment 7, tucked away on the top floor of a weathered, old building. It was a steal. The agent mentioned it had been vacant for a while, but the price was too good to question. Stepping inside for the first time, he noticed the worn carpets and the way the floorboards sighed under his weight. It was old, sure, but it was quiet. It felt like a sanctuary, high above the city's relentless noise. The first few days were a blur of unpacking boxes and settling in. Everything seemed perfectly normal. He dismissed the occasional cold spot as a draft from the old windows and the faint creaks as the building settling. He was just tired, he told himself. It was a new place, and he just needed to get used to its quirks. But the apartment had other plans. It started subtly, a strange coldness that would suddenly envelop him in the middle of the living room, even on a warm day. The feeling of being watched when he was completely alone. He'd leave a book on the coffee table, turn around, and find it lying on the floor. He started hearing things, faint whispers that seemed to ride on the edge of the silence, like a radio tuned to a dead station. He tried to rationalize it all: old pipes, the neighbors, his own imagination running wild in a new environment. But deep down, a seed of unease had been planted, and it was beginning to grow. The days remained ordinary, a deceptive calm before the night. But when the sun went down, apartment 7 began to show its true colors. The brand new light bulbs he'd installed would flicker and die, plunging him into sudden darkness. Even though the building's wiring had been recently updated, he'd be working at his desk, and from the corner of his eye, he'd see the wooden chair by the window shift just an inch, as if someone had just stood up from it. The whispers grew louder, no longer just on the edge of hearing, but now distinct, echoing from empty rooms, speaking in a language he couldn't understand but whose chilling tone was universal. He bought an old analog clock for the mantelpiece, hoping its steady ticking would be a comfort. One night, he watched in frozen disbelief as the second hand stuttered, stopped, and began to tick backward. 1 second, 2, 3. Then it jumped forward and resumed its normal rhythm as if nothing had happened. The shadows in the apartment became his tormentors. They stretched and contorted in ways that defied the light source, elongating into impossibly thin, spidery shapes that seemed to reach for him from across the room. It was no longer just a feeling. Something was in apartment 7 with him, something that didn't want him there. But what was it, and what did it want? The fear became a constant companion, a knot in his stomach that never loosened. He started sleeping with the lights on, but it made no difference. The activity only grew bolder, more aggressive. Then came the night that shattered his last shred of denial. He was jolted awake from a restless sleep by a deafening thud that vibrated through the floor. His heart hammered against his ribs. The sound had come from the hallway. He cautiously got out of bed and peered out of his bedroom. Down the hall, a door he knew he had locked. A small storage room he hadn't even opened since moving in was now wide open, swinging gently on its hinges. A profound, unnatural cold poured out from the blackness within. The room was empty, just bare walls and dust. But the air was thick, heavy with a dark, oppressive presence that suffocated him. Panic seized him. He had to get out. He turned and scrambled for the front door, his hands fumbling for the lock. But, as he looked down the corridor, it seemed to stretch, the exit door appearing further away than it had just moments before. The walls felt like they were closing in. Quick, fleeting images flashed in his vision, a cup sliding off the kitchen counter, the pages of a book flipping violently, a tall, shadowy figure standing at the far end of the hall, then vanishing. He finally reached the front door, his fingers trembling as he turned the deadbolt. Just as he pulled it open, the storage room door behind him slammed shut with a thunderous bang that echoed like a gunshot. He didn't look back, he just ran. He never spent another night in apartment 7. After catching his breath in the safety of a 24-hour cafe, he fell down a rabbit hole of online city archives and old news articles. That's when he found it, a small, overlooked report from decades ago about a tenant who had disappeared from that very apartment. There was no sign of a struggle, no evidence of foul play. The person had simply vanished, leaving all their belongings behind. Local legend, passed down through the building's older residents, whispered that apartment 7 was different. It wasn't just haunted, it was aware. The apartment, they said, chooses who is allowed to stay, it tests them. And those it finds unworthy, it torments, sometimes trapping them, making it impossible for them to leave easily. Apartment 7 keeps its secrets buried deep within its walls, and it remembers the name and the fears of every single person who has ever called it home. Alex was one of the lucky ones. He managed to escape. The next person might not be so fortunate. He never went back, not even to get his things. He left the city and the dream behind, haunted by the memory of what he experienced. So, what about you? Would you dare spend a night in apartment 7? Comment below if you think you could survive the night. And subscribe for more terrifying true stories.